Hi guys, welcome to today's video in the Swim England land training series. Today we're going to be looking at the age group session for mobility for turns. So the aim of this session here is just going to be to take 30 minutes looking at some exercises that are going to help us around some key muscles around at the hip that are going to allow us to be able to create range of motion and to be able to produce force effectively. To begin the warm-up for this session, you're just going to take 5 minutes of light jogging or on a bike. If you're doing it on the spot, you're going to start off maybe doing some jogging and then transition that into some star jumps just to mix it up. Make sure your hands cross overhead and that your knees and toes point out at the outset of each rep. You could maybe try doing some skipping on the spot or bounding, any sort of movement that's going to get your heart rate up and your blood flowing a bit more. Second exercise will be squat and hip lift. You're going to do 5 repetitions of this. So you squat down to at least parallel with your hips in line with your knee. Put your hands down onto the ground, straighten your legs and get your hips up as high as you can. Just making sure that you try and keep a straight back and then try and get some more depth on the squat with each time you go through. Make sure your weight is evenly spread through your whole foot. For thread the needle, you're going to do 8 repetitions on each side. So to set yourself up, you're going to place your elbow on top of your knee and then put your other hand onto your ear and rotate up towards the ceiling. As you do so, you've got to try and make sure that you don't lean your body weight in the direction of the rotation. So head on, you're going to reach elbow up and don't let your other shoulder go over the top away from your elbow. Do 8 on one side before you switch. Maybe start by touching your elbows before you reach and rotate, and try and make sure you get the same amount of rotation on both sides. Other variation of this, you start with a straight arm, reach up the same way, but as your hand goes under your body, use your fingers to pull you through to get a bit more of a stretch between your shoulder blades. For leg fallouts, you're going to lie flat on your back. Make sure no daylight can get between your lower back and the ground. Start with your bottoms of your feet touching, and you can either alternate or do all the reps on each side, on one side before you switch. You let your knee just fall out to the side. Should feel a bit of a stretch between your knee and your hip. And you're going to do 5 of those on each side. Just have a look now and again to make sure that each knee falls as far as the other one to find out whether you've got some other mobility needs you should address. The final part of the warm-up, you're going to perform a reverse lunge and rotate. So taking 5 reps on each side, drop back into a reverse lunge with a 90-degree right angle at your hip and your knee. Hands across your chest so you make sure that your sternum reaches out to the side as far as you can get whilst keeping straight back posture and your hips facing forward. And try and get a bit further each side. Try to recognize whether you've got more reach on one side than the other one. The first exercise of the main body for this session is a deep squat hold. So you're going to spend 45 seconds holding a deep squat. Get your hips at least below your knees, preferably all the way down to the ground, making sure that your weight is spread evenly through your feet and your back is straight. Moving into Inchworm complex, you start standing, reach your hands down to your feet and walk out into a press-up plank position and come back hands towards feet again. Then cross your ankles and take 1 foot off the floor, walk out into the same position before you then switch onto the other leg, and you're going to perform 3 of these on each position. The half kneeling hip flexor hold, you're going to do 20 seconds on each side. So right angle at knee and hip, pushing yourself forward by engaging your core and squeezing your hips as hard as you can, making sure your posture stays straight. If you want to increase the challenge, grab your back foot and pull it towards your hips, just making sure your posture remains the same. The real benefit here is from making sure you're actively squeezing your hips like you're trying to finish a glute bridge. Trying to make sure that your hip gets in front of your knee and you feel the majority of that stretch right on the top part of your hip. Reverse lunge to high knee. So performing 5 repetitions on each side, 5 on one before you switch. You're going to start in a high knee position, drop down, making sure that your body remains upright the whole time and not leaning forward. As you reach the floor, you then explode up like you're leaving the blocks. Try and hold yourself in that high knee position for a second just before you move into the next rep. Active straight leg raise. So performing 5 repetitions on each leg before you swap over. You're going to lie flat on your back, making sure no daylight again gets between your lower back and the ground. Make sure your other leg is pressed straight into the floor, and just raise your heel up towards the ceiling as best you can. If you notice that your knee starts to bend, just hold that position for a couple of seconds and relax down, rather than cheating to pull your foot up as far as you can with a bent knee. Similarly, make sure that the other leg remains flat on the ground. Push it flat if you need to, because that's going to have a big impact on how much of that range comes from your hamstring versus something else. And to finish off the round, you're going to perform a hip hinge and streamline with 5 repetitions. To start standing with the hip and core engaged, hinge forward, a slight bend in your knees, and push your hips back behind you, making sure that your back stays straight the whole time and your wrists and elbows stay in line or behind your ears as you go forward. Perform for 5 reps in total. Hold each position. So go through 3 or 4 rounds of this session to finish up.